Welcome to the Zen Dad Show. We have got a fantastic interview for you today. It is Dr. Katiraei out of Santa Monica, California. He is a superstar pediatrician. His credentials are just ridiculous. University of UCLA. He's also Western University for Health Sciences. He went to Loma Linda University and completed his pediatric residency there. Then he became the pediatric chief resident. He was teaching faculty for over 4 years. Like, this guy is just like, the list goes on and on. So let's dive in to this interview with Dr. K. He is awesome. I have such respect for this guy, and that he's just offered all this time to have this interview with us. You're really going to enjoy this. So strap in and enjoy.
Michael, I want to try.
So today, my guest is Dr. K, Dr. Pejman Katiraei. Am I saying that right?
That's close enough. Katiraei, but
Katiraei?
That's a tongue twister.
My last name is Kalryzian, and nobody ever gets it right. So I totally know where you're at with that. But you're coming to us today from, you're right outside of Los Angeles?
I am.
And you have Wholistic Kids. You're a pediatrician from there. And I am so excited to dig into your knowledge today. So first of all, you're a father and a pediatrician, and I've watched a couple of your videos, and I see you always have a necklace on with like beads that I'm assuming your kids have made for you. And you're
my daughter made that. Unfortunately, the necklace fell apart, so I'm waiting for her to make me a new one. So, and hence why I'm necklace free right now.
Yeah. That's awesome. I've seen it in a couple of videos, and I'm like, this guy's a great dad. Just that some dads would be like, I can't wear this on the video. And you're like, no, my kid made it. I'm wearing it. And I really appreciate that about you. It's just, it shows so much respect for your kids and what they do. And you can just tell that you're a very caring, loving person. I really appreciate that. So good.
Thank you.
And we haven't even gotten into your medical stuff that you do yet. It's wild. So there's a little bit of background. I mean, I've just talked to you once before. I think it was 15 minutes we talked. I went down this rabbit hole of mold and toxicity. And it was, it was just 3 days of me studying stuff. And you shifted my perspective so much in this little 15-minute chat. And I want to dig into how much of that do you see? Like, I'm up in Southern Ontario. You're in California. Is there a lot of mold problems out there? Is that like, you just seem to know it right off the top of your head. I'm like, I got this problem with my kid. And it's just like, oh, well, this is where you're at. And you just knew. It was amazing. I've been to tons of doctors, you know?
So, I think to kind of step back, we all face problems that sometimes don't make sense, or we normalize them, right? I'm 40 years old and I just got, a brain that doesn't work anymore because I'm just a parent, right? Or I've been chronically fatigued for the last 5 years and it takes me 15 cups of coffee to get going in the mornings, but I'm a parent. So why isn't that normal, right? There's so many things. Like, I've had chronic congestion for half my life and it's normal. There are things that we just call normal because we just think that, well, that's just how things are. And especially with our medical system, doctors are like, well, some people are just fatigued. I don't know. Your blood count looks normal. I did this one simple test and everything looks normal. So therefore there's no problem. And, this would be all fine and dandy if everyone was relatively healthy and, in the big scheme of things, there really were not that many significant problems. And really how I got into this entire case, if you want to say, or situation is, I'm one of those weird guys, if you want to say, that just loves asking questions. I was the 6-year-old that took apart my parents' TV, and then one day they came home and there I am, like, with the back of the TV open, and they're like, "What the hell are you doing?" I wanted to see, I wanted to see how it worked. I mean, isn't it obvious? Like, don't you want to see how it works? Like, that's just how my brain is wired. I love to understand why things work. And, early on, this is 2008, 2009, I started, when I was just finishing my residency in pediatric training, I started really noticing, like, well, there's a lot of weird stuff that makes no sense. Like, why is it that some people just develop diseases randomly, quote unquote, right? Why is it that some people's intestines fall apart and they get colitis? Why is it that some people's thyroids fall apart? Why is it that kids are learning disabled? What the hell is autism, right? There's all of these weird things that we just say, well, like autism just happens, right? Some kids just get autism and that's just part of life. What? And, you know,
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It doesn't. When you really start dissecting, you know, everything, you start getting to a place where you're like, well, either we're just not smart enough to understand the answers, or like diseases just come out of the blue, right? It's just like something like a ghost just pops out of thin air and there it is, which is illogical, right?
Yeah.
And the further I've gone in my career and the more training that I've done, and I've been very, very blessed to have found some really smart mentors who have just, you know, in their own microcosm of things, they have really come to master that one piece. And, you know, I've gone in there, whether it took me 2 years, 2 months, or 4 years in one case, I sat there and basically tried to soak up all the bits and pieces of information that they had. And each of these mentors, along with my now thousands of patients, have taught me. And really what it's boiled down to, everything, and I can't underline that enough, everything in the human body and the human brain has a reason for happening. There's nothing that just happens. There's nothing that is just coincidental. Nothing just occurs because everything has
somehow.
Yeah. Everything is linked. There's a reason for everything. Now, if we can't understand that reason, it's because of our own ignorance. It's because we just aren't smart enough to understand the connections, but that doesn't mean there isn't a reason. And when you run down these rabbit holes far enough and deep enough, you finally get to a place where you're like, oh, that's why that's happening. Oh, that's why, for instance, not that I'm a master in autism by any means, but like, oh, that's one reason of many why autism can happen, or why learning disabilities happen, or, you know, autoimmune diseases happen. You get to a place where the patterns certainly start kind of emerging, and it's like you can start seeing the intricacies in the body and be like, oh, well, that throws that off, and that throws that off, and that's why this poor person experiences disease Z. So it's, you know, when we were talking, some of the things that you shared, because I deal with a lot of this in kids, you know, and mold has become a very, very big part of what I do. It's become very easy for me now to, you know, make the connections and ask 4 or 5 questions, be like, oh, you probably have mold. So along with an answer to your question.
So yeah, it's a great answer. It's a great answer to the question. How big of a role do mentors still play in your practice? Are you still communicating with a lot of your mentors? Is it something that you like tap into these resources all the time, where you're like, I've got this problem, what do you guys think about this? Is that part of your practice? I know you've got a couple people working at Wholistic Kids. Do you draw a lot of information from other sources, or are you just like at that level now where you're just like, oh, I know this one, I know this one, I know this one? Is it an ongoing research that you're always doing with other people?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in great communication, and ultimately I'm friends with, you know, all my mentors. I stay in touch with them, if nothing else, just to stay in touch with them. Every now and then, you know, a random, very complicated case shows up, and I'll be like, hey, you know, Kamyar, who's one of my greatest mentors, Kamyar Hidayat, you know, I'll reach out to him and be like, hey, this is super, super weird. I have no idea what the hell is going on. What do you see? You know, same thing with others in their respective fields. And, you know, what's been interesting is, as they have trained me, what has also happened is, you know, as I've kind of gone running down and done my own research, all of a sudden there are things that I'm starting to realize that I'll go back to them and be like, hey, FYI, remember that thing that we couldn't figure out? This is a possibility. So, you know, it's they're mentorships, they're also friendships, and I'm forever indebted and grateful for these brilliant people who just invested so much love and energy in helping me grow.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's setting up that community of information, just so that it's out there, so that people can share it. I mean, I would love if my doctor looked into the mold issue, you know, because I've gone to my doctor a bunch of times, but it's just out of his scope. it's just not, it's not where he was at. You know, we got tests done and he's like, everything's fine. Your kid looks healthy. And I'm like, there's something off, something's going on. And it's just this little bit more investigation. But I think that a lot of doctors, they kind of get their narrow scope of what they do, and that's where their answers are. You know, like you have a background in osteopath, like I think that's where you started as an osteopath. And like, if I go to an osteopath, they've got a solution that deals with osteopathy. I think that's a word, you know, but if I go to my general practitioner, they've got a pill for me. If I go to a nutritionist, this is the diet plan. Everybody's kind of got their own cure, you know, but nobody's really looking at the whole spectrum. And I think that's what I appreciate about your approach so much, is that you, from what I've seen, and I mean, I've kind of become one of your biggest fans. Like I started following you on Instagram and I'm like, who is this guy? What's going on here? And then it's just again and again and again, I was like, oh, this guy's got some good stuff. And I started commenting, and we just kind of built that relationship really quick there. But it's like you just had all these different vantage points that you were looking at a problem with. And I was like, he's really onto something here. And I think when we can't do it ourselves, we have to kind of branch out into the community around us to gather that information, especially when your kids are involved. Like me trying to figure out something for my kid, because I'm not a doctor. I'm not an osteopath. I don't have these things, but I've always told my kids, if I can't fix your problem, I'm going to find somebody that can. And I am relentless with my search for solving problems. Kind of like you. I was the kid that took apart the back of the TV, right? So, I mean, once you get into mold, it's so tricky to diagnose. How do you diagnose that? Is your, I think it was a mycotoxin test. Is that your go-to for that?
Let's backtrack for a second, because I think you touched on something that's, really, really important. So,
sure.
As physicians, and frankly, all healthcare providers, there's a few limiting factors that keep people kind of stuck. One, there are people who essentially start looking at their model of treatment. This could be an acupuncturist, chiropractor, regular medical doctor, whomever. But they start looking at what they do as almost like a religion. They've kind of arrived in this place. They're now in Mecca or Jerusalem or whatever. And because you have now arrived and you have heard the word from the person, whoever that teacher of yours or group of teachers are, you have heard the truth. And the truth is the truth. And this is all that there is. And if these teachers teach you more truth, then you will expand your truth. And if they don't teach you your truth, then that's it. So, medical doctors go to conferences, they read medical journals, they interact with their peers in, medical conferences or case discussions or whatever else. And through that, they're expanding their knowledge base, but it's all kind of funneled in one direction. Holistic medicine doctors, they'll go to functional medicine conferences or whatever else, and whatever is presented to them, they digest. When these people are presented with facts that are so far outside of their range, that it might as well have been an alien that landed on their front porch. It's like, hi, I'm here to teach you something, and they're like, dude, you're an alien. Get the heck out of here. I don't believe you, because my teachers have told me this. And, early on when I started my training, so in holistic medicine, and even before, even in residency, I thought like, okay, I've arrived. I trained at Loma Linda University, which is a great institution. God bless those people. And they had a lot to teach me. And, I felt like, okay, by the time I'm done with my training, I'll know everything there is to know about pediatrics, and I'll be a competent pediatrician. And what I realized is like, oh, shoot, no, they don't know everything. I mean, they know a lot, and they train me in terms of how to deal with medical catastrophes, but there was a lot they didn't know. So then I started training in functional medicine, and I thought like, okay, these guys totally have all the answers because they are the Institute of Functional Medicine, and Mark Hyman is God, and God bless him. Like Mark Hyman is a genius who works his tail off, and he has literally transformed, the field of integrative medicine, at least in the US. So lots of credit to him, lots of credit to the Institute of Functional Medicine. They rock. But, as I was training with them and did their courses, and I thought like, okay, they're going to teach me everything I need to know. And then all of a sudden, like, well, no, actually, they don't have it all figured out. And gosh, there's other things that they don't know. So then I went and trained, in this weird field of medical herbalism called endobiogeny, where I did a fellowship in systems biology under my mentor, Kamyar Hidayat, and he spoon-fed me information for 4 years. Literally, I was like the little pup that was suckling on the teat, and I was like, okay, and 4 years later, I'm like, okay, Kamyar has taught me everything I need to know. And I mean, Kamyar's knowledge base is ridiculous. And by the time I was done, like my brain was completely rewired. But long story short, what I've realized is there is no one person that has all the answers. There is no medical group, no entity that has everything figured out. And most practitioners struggle with that concept because, in a sense, in order to be able to step outside of your box, you have to acknowledge, like, Jesus, actually, I don't know everything. And Jesus, my mentors don't know everything. And the group that I've been training with doesn't know everything. And as human beings, that actually creates a lot of insecurity at a mental, emotional, psychological, sociological level. And for a lot of practitioners to acknowledge that that vacuum, if you want to say, that knowledge vacuum, that absence, actually creates a very uncomfortable place, because now you're like, well, shoot, then everything that I've been doing is actually inadequate. In fact, everything that I know is kind of inadequate. Holy Jesus, well, that makes me kind of inadequate. And there are a lot of people that actually can't stomach that. And if they can, then that also means that they need to spend an absurd amount of time to do additional training, which, some very well-intending, open-minded people just kind of throw up their hands. They're like, dude, I'm tired.
It's just
too much. It's too much. I've spent 8 years already training. I've got a family and kids. I just want to go clock in my time, serve my patients to the best of my ability. And I don't even have the mental bandwidth to do more training, even if I know it's out there. Which actually creates a very big fundamental limitation to our current practice of medicine. And I'm happy to dig into this some more if you want.
I would love to dig into this more. Oh man, for me I've been a stay-at-home dad for 7 years now. I've separated with my wife. I'm a single dad. I've got the kids the majority of the time, and it's like now it's kind of on me to figure out all these things. And when I go to a practitioner, and our health system is very narrow-minded, because like in the scope of the Ontario health system, it's like, well, I don't have that test. I can't get it for you. Like, it's not paid for. Our health system is just different here too, which kind of gives you an even narrower box, because I had to look up the mycotoxin urine test. I've got to ship it in from the States and then ship it back. And it's $400 American. And if I want me and my both kids to do it, like it's a huge amount of money, especially when I'm used to free healthcare, So it's like, what can I get out of the free healthcare? It's such a different mindset that way. But I am relentless in, like, I want to solve these problems. I think my kids should be healthy and thriving and be able to think and not be sad and have that amount of energy, So when I think about the current state of how doctors kind of approach it from that narrow vantage point, like, what is the solution? Where do we go from here? Do you have this answer? I would love it if you had the answer.
I mean, this is something that I struggled with years ago, because, as I go further and further in my training and, become even more highly specialized in working with kids with, severe learning and behavioral issues. And, I see the kids who they can't function. The kids who literally are about to get put on antipsychotic medications and they're 6, or the kids who have such severe ADHD and learning disabilities where even on ADHD medications, they're struggling. I mean, that's the severity of the kids that I work with, which obviously means other cases are even easier to work with. But, part of what I realized years ago is that I could spend a lot of time trying to teach other providers who are interested, and I'm still interested in doing that. But even then, that would limit my ability to make a big contribution to society and ultimately the world. And, whether people are in Canada like you or in Australia, and we've had families from, the EU reach out, families from the Middle East reach out. What I realized is there has to be another way to do this. And that's when it dawned on me that actually technology is probably the most efficient and effective way to really change these dynamics. Now, there are a lot of companies, Google, others, that are spending god awful amounts of money trying to kind of bring health technology into healthcare. What I realized is, a lot of these companies are basically trying to pour through a ton of data to make some sense of it. Whereas when I look at what I do, and you saw in our conversation, I asked you like 5 really weird kind of detailed questions, and you shared a little bit about me and your family. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, based on this, and this, you probably have mold. Ultimately, technology can be taught to do that. And technology is actually very efficient. And once you give it the right data, it can actually decipher the patterns very easily. Mm-hmm. And that's where my partner and I actually decided, and for the last 2.5 years, we've been working on this system called Wholistic Minds. So WHOLISTICMINDS. And really the purpose of this, what's that?
.com?
.com.
Wholisticminds.com. Got it.
Yes. Yeah. And Wholistic Minds is really a system that asks, a lot of very detailed questions, and the future iterations will actually help families upload weird labs that make absolutely no sense to most people. And through that, the system can actually detect patterns that are seemingly kind of invisible. And really what it boils down to is knowing how to ask exactly the right questions for exactly the right person to get exactly the right answer. And once you do, the patterns are very, very obvious. And that is what I believe is actually the future of really making a difference. Because I wish I could see 1,000 people, a month and really serve anyone and everyone who wants care. But I would drive myself into the ground and ultimately be divorced and, with no kids and miserable and probably very unhealthy. Yeah. So that's where the technology comes in, because I'm really hoping to be able to replace myself and give everyone access to this information at a very, very nominal cost.
Yeah. So is this like a one-time fee? Is this a subscription? Like, what is the plan here with Wholistic Minds? Is it to replace yourself? Are you replacing yourself with a robot?
Yeah. I really hope that I actually can replace myself. And ultimately one day the system makes me look like a complete novice, because its capacity hopefully will go well beyond mine.
And the ability to serve multiple people at the same time. Like you could serve 1,000 people in a day. Yeah. And that's fantastic.
And because it's scalable, it also means that we can, exponentially drive down the cost of care. Because once the system is set up, then there's less and less maintenance that's involved. And at that point, we can charge a fraction of what I charge, because every consult I do takes 2 hours, which is a god awful amount of time. Yeah. So when human time goes out of the picture, costs can come far down. And that's when you can really support a lot of people in their healing journey. The system itself is set up as a membership kind of recurring thing, because you can't just throw some people data and say, okay, have a nice life. Here's what you need to do. Go do it. Good luck figuring it out. It's like, okay, you've got this issue. Like, let's take the conversation of mold, because I know you've brought that up. Once you suspect there's mold, then it's like, okay, well, how the hell do I actually determine if it's an issue? And there are tests actually you can order with your doctor that are weird. They'll look at it and be like, this is a really strange test. I don't know why the hell you want me to order it, but sure, I'll order it. Insurance will cover it. And that, along with other tests, can start helping you figure out, is there something going on? Now, you get the results. You're like, well, what the hell do I do with these results, right? Yep. So then comes the next step of, okay, let's take these results and see if they make sense. Do they add up to what we think is going on? And then once you've like, oh, shoot, yeah, the results add up. Then it's like, what the hell do I do then, right? So it's a journey. There's a healing journey that typically takes about 6 to 12 months. And just like with my practice, I don't do an initial consult and be like, well, this is what I think is going on. Have a nice life, never talk to me again. It's like, no, you have to support people through every step until they get to where they want to be and true health has actually emerged.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a fantastic plan. I'm ready to sign up. I need a bunch of your information. I think that when I got into the mold talk, when I got into the rabbit hole and I started going down and trying to figure out, like, how do I know what mold it is? Where is the mold? What's going on there? Is it in my kid's body now? And the funny thing was, I'm going to go off on a little tangent here, but I just recently watched the movie Venom, the Spider-Man one. And it's the black ooze guy from space, the alien that comes down. And he's like, oh, I'm a symbiote and I'm going to be part of your body. But it gives him like superhuman powers and like he can change into this big monster guy. And I'm like, that's the mold. The mold is in the body and it's living off of the body. And it changes like what your cravings are and how you act and all these things. So it's like you become this host for another creature in your body, but then how do you figure out that's what's going on? Then how do you get that out of your body? And how my 4-year-old doesn't have the ability to verbalize these things or the knowledge to be like, hey, I'm feeling kind of weird. And maybe it's this, or maybe 2 years ago when that mold was in the house, it got in me. Like putting those pieces of the puzzle together when I'm not a doctor or a mold specialist, just like your average everyday guy, there's the numbers around mold in houses is staggering.
Yeah.
Or sick building syndrome, didn't even know that was a thing, But once you go down those rabbit holes and you're like, oh, it's ticking off all these boxes of symptoms, you're like, whoa, this is an actual thing. This is happening in my life. Could be going on with my kid. Yeah. And it's like, oh man, this is my responsibility as a parent. I've got to fix this somehow. I'm sure you get that all the time where parents have gone like from one to the next, and they're just like, we don't know what to do. We know there's something wrong. Nobody can figure it out. What is it? And they come to you with that problem.
Yeah. And, working with these families has really been the greatest driver for me to seek out more information because like I said, I look at things as if I can't figure out a case, it's not because the case can't be solved. It's because I'm just too ignorant yet to understand what the hell is going on. And with every case, I'm like, well, clearly I don't know what the hell is going on and I need to figure it out. And, sometimes I'm the one that figures it out. I've had, in the case of molds, it was actually one of my families that, this rock star of a mom whose kid was really unwell. We tried all my bag of tricks, elimination diet, gut protocol, blah, 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 blah. Nothing worked. And she was the one that was doing her research. And then she came back to me. She's like, hey, what if this is mold? And I'm like, sure. I don't know what the hell it is. So maybe, why not? I'm open. So we started going down the road. We did some testing. The testing initially was really confusing. It wasn't clear cut. And, I was like, I don't know what the hell to make of this. And she took it upon herself to actually find, my next mentor, Dr. Neil Nathan, whom I then joined the fellowship and spent, 2 years training under. And she basically found them and she's like, hey, I've got an appointment with him next week to go over the results. Can you join? I'm like, hell yeah. And through her opening that door and helping to make that connection, I then, after watching how he approached things, I'm like, dude, you rock. I need to learn from you. And then he opened the doors and allowed a bunch of us to start working with him and learning from him. And he opened my eyes, in this case, specifically to mold. But if we all start with a place of curiosity and openness to say, like, there's something weird going on. There's something going on. And, as parents, one of the things that we as physicians do, and I've been guilty of this myself in the past. So I'm not just passing, the blame on others. I pass the blame on my former self. A lot of times as practitioners, we'll be like, well, no, it can't be mold because it's not mold, even though you don't know what the hell mold is. And, in the past, I had discounted the possibility of mold because I didn't know how big of a mess it could cause. So we're guilty of that. And we need to be, well, you as families, this is what I was going to say, you as parents, you as families, if you see that there's something off and your instincts tell you like, hey, something is weird, this isn't making sense, trust your instincts. Trust your instincts and keep digging, because ultimately your instincts will lead you to the right place. I mean, you're the perfect example. You were digging for answers, and we somehow got connected, and here we are.
Yeah.
But a lot of times your instincts will guide you to the right place if you just listen to them.
Yeah, that's great advice. Just keep going, eh?
Yeah.
When I got in, and I started looking at lectins were a big thing, oxalates, hypersensitive people. I'm a ridiculously sensitive person to everything, to chemicals, and to I mean, I don't even drink alcohol anymore, because I mean, 3 drinks in me and the party is on. So I've just cut it right out.
In a not good way.
In not a good way. Like I'm ready to drive down to Mexico and just like, let's do it, right? And I'm in Canada, so that's a good drive. For you, it's nothing. But it's like, I'm so sensitive to everything. I'm so sensitive to chemicals in the house, like cleaners or all of these things. And I think my youngest son is the same way. He's just super, super sensitive to things. He stopped eating meat. He doesn't like meat all of a sudden, and he used to, but now he doesn't. And I'm trying to figure out what is causing these things. Is it sensitivities because of mold? Is he just stressed out because of the separation? I mean, it's been 7 months now, and everybody's kind of settled into the new arrangement, but at the same time, he's still kind of stressed, and he's doing a lot of transitions. So there's all these factors that kind of come in, and I'm like, okay, well, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. But how do you narrow it down? Is it just a process of elimination that you're like, okay, well, it's not this, it's not this, or do you just keep trying things? I watched a video that you did about, what was it? Lithium? I think it was lithium. And you're like, microdoses of lithium. I'm like, oh my God, I got to take lithium. And then it was black currant. I'm like, oh my God, I got to take black currant. And there were all these things. And I'm like, oh my God, am I a hypochondriac? What's going on here? I think I'm just, everything's wrong with me. And I'm just missing all these things. And it becomes so complex. And as a parent these days, you're just so busy. You're so distracted. You have to be a specialist in everything just to kind of deal with life, Yeah. So it's nice to have professionals that are creating systems like wholisticminds.com, where you can get on and be like, okay, I got some actual information here that I can tap into. But what is your take on, I mean, I've been off of gluten for years, but it's almost, if I'm not eating gluten, I'm avoiding lectins, I'm on a low oxalate diet, no sugar. Like I run out of food.
Yeah.
My kids are like, well, what do you eat then all of a sudden?
Where's the food? And then you're like, to a place where, God, I can't even breathe the air because the air is too contaminated by various chemicals. So what the hell do I do then?
I've got a big air filter sitting right beside me, and it takes out all the chemicals, and I do paintings and stuff. So I'm like, I want to get all those VOCs out of the air and dust out of the air, because my son's allergic to dust. And it's just, you can't even breathe anymore, because we just have all of this knowledge without, and the solutions are there. It's just figuring out what solutions to apply. How do you navigate that?
So I think that's a really good question. And, there's this concept of Occam's razor, right? If one thing can explain everything, then it's probably the right explanation. And, let's actually talk about some of the things you mentioned. Sure. Oxalates, right? So oxalates are these funny little crystals that kind of float through the system. Usually we should poop them out. And if we don't, then they start going in their bloodstream, in our bloodstream. They can end up in the urine. They can cause kidney stones. And, eating a low oxalate diet and avoiding things like spinach and so forth is helpful. But, this is actually something I was struggling with a few years ago, because when I was doing these tests, I was noticing these high oxalates. I'm like, damn, what the hell are these oxalates about? And then I got really excited and I was like, oh, well, if you just eliminate oxalates from the diet, that'll fix everything, until I realized, well, no, that doesn't make sense, because these people aren't eating 4 pounds of spinach every day, so it can't be the diet. And that's when I, stumbled onto, this brilliant doc named Dr. William Shaw, who's actually the head of Great Plains Laboratories here in the US. Dr. Shaw is the one that taught me, like, hey, guy, oxalates are actually produced by molds and candida. And I'm like literally my mind was blown. I'm like, oh, fill in the blank. Damn, okay. And then all of a sudden, like, he started helping me see that one piece, because it turns out that aspergillus and candida in particular actually produce oxalates on their own. So if you've got a boatload of candida and aspergillus in your gut, for instance, those suckers alone just start pumping out tons of oxalates. And that's when, like, all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, well, there's one piece of the puzzle, and it's literally like putting together this big puzzle piece. You're like, okay, there's one piece. Now, what the hell would cause people to become crazy allergic to the entire world, where foods and chemicals and dust, and like literally they're just reacting to every known compound to the point where it's like, okay, now you need to just live in a bubble for the rest of your life because you can't be exposed to anything. That's weird, right? And I had these patients where I would test them, whether food allergy testing or these funny food sensitivity tests, and literally just everything would light up. And the parents are like, so do I just stop feeding my kid? I'm like, that's not a good idea, is it? They're like, no, what the hell do we do? I'm like, I don't know, And over time, it turns out that molds and the toxins they produce actually activate mast cells. There's actually a term for it called mast cell activation syndrome. And there was this one speaker that I was listening to once that said, like, if you see a whole bunch of food allergies or sensitivities, you have mold. And I'm like, oh, fill in the blank. I don't know. Do we curse or not here? Probably shouldn't, right?
You can swear all you want, Dr. K. Go down, buddy.
That was like when you're like, oh, shit. Like, damn, oh, that makes sense. Because, when you just get these weird things of like, why the hell, like a single allergy, like some people just have dust allergies, or some people have just, allergies to oak tree. Okay, that makes sense. A single peanut allergy. Okay, I buy that. Like, those things happen. But when you've got people that are just allergic to the entire world, and every chemical, every dust, every pollen, every food triggers their immune system to go ape, nuts, all of a sudden you're like, well, that's not logical. And you start getting into these weird worlds where, there are people that are just obsessed over mast cell activation syndrome and just obsessed over this, allergy piece. And you go and learn from these people and you're like, oh, damn, you have that answer. And then, another piece of the puzzle pops in. And then you start getting into, for instance, your son's sensitivity to meats. So I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not smart enough to be able to tell you psychologically how that piece would come together. And maybe
you'll get there. Don't worry. I'm sure you're going to study a little bit more. That's your next level right there, Dr. K, psychologist.
But, maybe it was a psychological thing, and just the trauma of, the change in the homes caused that. I can also tell you that a lot of the kids I take care of, and I'm talking, 60+% of the kids I take care of, have really weird food texture sensitivities. Now, it turns out that mast cells, especially the histamines that they produce, right? Histamines are what cause allergies, right? Runny nose, hives, etc. And when you've got too much histamine floating around, you get allergies. You get chronic runny nose, you can get hives, you can get other things, you can get diarrhea. It turns out that histamine, and there was this really cool article published, 20 years ago by this guy, Haas, Haas, I think. And this guy literally spent God knows how much time writing an 80-page article that talks about how histamine affects the nervous system. And literally that was this person's obsession. So I sat there and dissected that article, and it turns out that histamine changes, without getting into all the details, actually changes our sensory pathways. So it literally changes our sensory experience of the world, which is the trippiest thing to think about. And how I came to understand this initially wasn't because of that article. It was actually my patients, because I was treating them for histamine issues for other reasons. And the parents came back and they're like, yeah, Susie is suddenly wearing clothes she hasn't before, or Johnny is eating foods he hasn't eaten before, or, Tommy is now going with me to parties and he's no longer freaking out. And that's when I'm like, damn, that's weird. I didn't know that. That's cool. And I'll give you an example with my own daughter, because she and I are actually built very similarly to, you and your children,
Yep.
or at least your son. And both my daughter and I are actually very similar to most of the patients I take care of. We just happen to be healthy versions of the poor kids who are not healthy. And in my daughter, and this was probably no more than 2 months ago, when we would wash her hair, or my wife would come to brush her hair, I mean, literally it was like 15 minutes of like intense crying and tears. And
Are you kidding me? Washing my son's hair, he freaks out. It's been months now. I've got a shower cap for him so the water doesn't go down his face. He like negotiates how much I can wash his hair a week. We're down to 1 a week because it freaks him out. This is a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big thing.
See, I'm learning so much, Dr. K. I'm learning and learning and learning here. Tell me about this. How does this work?
Check this out. So, like for your son's hair, why the hell would he make such a big deal out of it, right?
That's what I'm thinking. Why?
Like,
what is this a big deal here?
Well, it turns out, I mean, for you, it's not a big deal because you're like, what's the big deal, dude? Why don't you let me wash your hair? And, as parents, as providers, and even in the psychology world, we really never give credit to the kids for why they express to us whatever it is that's bugging them. We're like, just suck it up, dude, push through. Like when if you were to go to see a therapist and you're like, my kid doesn't want to wash hair, they give you tools to basically push your kid to wash the hair. No one would say, well, why the hell is this poor kid freaking out over their hair being washed or their body being washed? Or, a lot of these kids are sensitive to sound, so they can't go into crowded spaces with 50 people talking at the same time. They freak out. We see this especially in kids on the spectrum, right? They get overwhelmed by the world. And we never ask, like, what causes this poor child to get overwhelmed by the world, right? We don't stand back and ask that question. Mm-hmm. And part of why, for me, this is really kind of a close thing in my own heart is not just because of my daughter. Like, I actually have subtle things like this where, for instance, if I cut my nails really close, like for literally 5 hours, it bugs the hell out of me because I can feel it. As a kid, I used to have struggled like wearing pants because they were too scratchy. Like my parents would be like, suck it up, dude, you're wearing the pants, shut the heck up. And I would, but as I've
sensitivity come from for you? Like, is that just your makeup? That's just your genetics or your epigenetics? It's just how you are?
So I think for me in the past, especially, I mean, it is partly how I'm wired. And, if you get into this world, there's actually a term called highly sensitive people, right? We're wired in a way where we take in way more in the world, and our brains are just wired to be hyper vigilant. And, 1,000 years ago, we were, the people that would keep the villages safe. As soon as there'd be a tiger 50 miles away, we would notice it while everyone else was sleeping, right? At one point, it had an advantage. Now we're the ones that are anxiety prone, and we're the ones that kind of turn into a hot mess if we're not healthy, because our nervous systems are just way too damn sensitive. And, I drive my wife crazy all the time because, like, the poor thing has to deal with, my neuroses that come out when I'm out of balance.
Sign me up for that club, buddy. I'm in there with you. It is wild. You're so aware of everything that's happening, what the sound is, what the smells are, the temperature of the room. Like, it's all, I notice it all. And then I'm like, is that mold? Do I have venom in me? Is it like telling me this is what's going on? And I'm trying to put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And I'm like, I think I'm losing my mind. There's no alien in me. This isn't how it works. But then it's like, well, am I just always hypersensitive to that? What is that? Is it just like, we're just a different kind of people? and I didn't really get it. And then once I started watching my kid go through it, and I'm like, oh, he's just like me. Everything, he's really sensitive to it. And that's why it was a negotiation with washing the hair. And he like, for a 4-year-old, this kid knows how to negotiate. And I was like, what is happening? I'm actually having a negotiation about washing your hair. Your hair is dirty. We got to wash it. And he's like, okay, I'll tell you what. And he lays down the plan for me. This is the times I'm going to wash my hair. I'm going to get it wet this time. And he's got it figured out. And it's like, wow, this really, really affects him. And I was so aware of how much it was affecting him, that it was so important to him that he had to figure out in his 4-year-old brain how to negotiate the minimal amounts of times that he could get his hair washed. That's how important it was to him. And I was like, whoa, this is something's going on here. And then all the other pieces of the puzzle start fitting in, right? So yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I think I interjected there.
No, it's perfect. And a quarter of all human beings are highly sensitive. And it turns out that highly sensitive people aren't just wired differently. Their entire physiologies, literally down to the cellular level, are completely different. Our ability to produce energy is different. Our immune systems are different. Our ability to handle toxins are different. Our guts are wired differently. Like literally everything about our physiology is different. And, take for example, someone like Elon Musk, right? That guy is built like a friggin' tank. And, not that I know him personally, but people like Elon Musk, I mean, the amount of stress they can endure is ridiculous, and when you look at people, there are some people that could literally live in a toxic soup, right? They smoke cigars every day. They drink alcohol all the time. They could be in a mold infested home where the walls are crumbling and they're fine. Nothing happens to them at all, right? They don't develop gluten sensitivity. They don't develop food allergies. Nothing happens to them. And that's because their physiologies are so friggin' resilient at every level that they just don't get touched. And that's like one kind of end of the spectrum. And then we've got us kind of probably over here, and the autistic kids are probably over here. They're the uber physiologically sensitive individuals that sadly are getting tipped over and becoming ill. And what we call autism is actually their state of dysfunction and illness because they're so off in how their bodies can function. Now, when you take someone who's highly sensitive, if you're in a really healthy place, the compassion and just overall joy and experience you can have is amazing. And, the highly sensitive people are also the most creative people. They become the inventors of the world. They produce beautiful art. There's a lot of amazing things these highly sensitive individuals can do. When the highly sensitive goes out of balance, the highly sensitive turns into a train wreck. So physiologically, things get off, and I mean, I test, like, I'm pointing the finger first at me.
I've been the train wreck. I've been the train wreck.
Me too.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it happens. And you're like, I don't even know how to get this back on the tracks. I'm just such a train wreck right now. And it's like your whole day is just around getting through the day. And it's like,
you're surviving.
You got to pay attention to what you're eating and who's around you, and like what your exercise is and all of those things. And it becomes not only like a necessity, like it's just like, I have to do this to get through the day, to live. That's how sensitive I get when I'm a train wreck, and it is, I can't even imagine being that, in the world today as a little kid. It breaks my heart to think that, holy shit, you've already got so much to deal with. And now you're this hypersensitive kid that just doesn't know what's going on, So when I see my 4-year-old like that, it's like, I'm going to do everything that I can. And if I can't figure it out, there's going to be somebody that does know how to figure it out. Just keep going down that rabbit hole until you find those.
God bless you for holding that space. And, what's really, really, really sad is there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of kids that are struggling at such a profound level that, I mean, it's beyond heartbreaking.
It is.
3 years ago, when I decided to, do this crazy thing of building this company with my partner, um, I had kids sitting in my practice, and I vividly still remember this, where, an 8-year-old was, we had these stuffed animals, pre-COVID, and they were in these stuffed animals and their head was kind of sticking out from the animals. And the little kid looked at me dead in the eyes, 8-year-old. And he's like, do you think I'm bad? Literally, do you think I'm evil?
Yeah.
And, this was a kid that was constantly getting in trouble, was getting kicked out of school, was getting in fights with other kids, constantly reacting to the world, constantly like having all kinds of issues. And this poor kid had come to think of himself as bad. And other kids have looked at me, similar age, like, do you think I'm dumb? Do you think I'm dumb? And because they can't learn, because they can't focus, their brains are just distracted all the time, they just come to think of themselves, well, I'm just dumb and I can't learn. And, in that moment, that's when I'm like, holy shit. Like, and the more I've looked, the more I've realized, like, oh my God, like, it's not just a handful of kids. Like you and I, yeah, like we're yeah, but it's a lot. It's a large percentage of the number. I don't know about Canada, but in the US, a quarter of kids, that's about 15 million kids, are ultimately diagnosed with some kind of mental health issue. 15 million kids just in the United States. The United States, with either anxiety, ADHD, autism, OCD, or some kind of other mental health challenge. That's a staggering effed up number.
That's a lot.
And, yeah. And, part of why I've gotten down this road and I've gotten really, driven to make a difference is I'm like, shit, like if I hadn't, and ultimately how I got to getting myself in a better place was, I basically had to crack my own code and had to figure out what the hell was affecting my physiology. And I'm still learning. But, I got to a place where I'm like, Jesus Christ, like if my parents didn't have the ability to feed me healthy foods, if I had grown up in a moldy home, which fortunately I did not, I would have been a complete disaster. I mean, I sure as hell wouldn't be here talking to you. I probably wouldn't have made it through medical school, and I'd probably be some kind of, disabled person that was kind of half functional, having anxiety attacks every day because my entire system was a wreck.
Yeah.
And this is the relevance and importance of this conversation, because there's so many people suffering, from your experience, which, thank God, I'm hoping is not too bad. Right. And then there are people,
better. I'm getting better every day.
Thank God.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of disability. And right now, our only opportunity to do something about that is to throw medications at it. And I say this all the time. I have nothing against psychiatric medications. If psychiatric medications or whatever else helps someone in whatever way, awesome. That's fantastic. And it should be used. And I will never say no to anyone using any kind of medication to help themselves feel better. But at the same time, like the things that we've talked about so far, your son's, struggle with hair and your own challenges. And I don't know if you want to share what those have been, but how do we get to the root cause, right? How the hell do we figure out what is causing all of these things that is then causing a person to struggle, to then figure out what to do to help?
Well, I'm going to share a little bit, not too much information, but it has been, I'm going to say, almost 20 years now of me trying to figure out my diet. And I was one of the first gluten-free people. I had a fantastic dietitian, nutritionist that said, write down everything that you eat for 30 days and come back to me. And every meal I had gluten in it, and breakfast, lunch, dinner, gluten. If it was bread, if it was pasta, if it was pizza, if it was toast, whatever it was. She's like, oh, you've just given yourself a gluten intolerance. Well, I mean, that was one thing, but then there was toxins, and then it was in the water, and then there was other stuff. And then the air filters came in, and I've got titanium cookware because Teflon affected me, it was so sensitive. I had diverticulitis in my guts, my stomach. I can't put on muscle. I don't put on weight. I'm 150 pounds, but I'm constantly moving. And it's like the energy levels also, I'm a pretty energetic guy, but I can also feel like, and you say you're in your 40s and it starts to deplete. How do you change all that? How do you actually get into your mitochondrial and turn them back on, or clean it all out and get all the mold out? How do you know what to do? where is the process, or who is the person you talk to that's like, oh, I can figure out all this for you. This is your diet that you need to eat. I even did the Viome. It's you send in your samples and they tell you, these are your superfoods. These are the foods to avoid. And like broccoli's on there and celery's on there. I can't eat these things. Well, broccoli and celery, I've been feeding it to myself and my kids because it's greens. These are the superfoods you're supposed to eat, right?
Yeah.
But not for me. Spinach. Yep. I have eaten so much spinach in the last 3 years. There is constantly a tub of organic spinach, smoothies, omelets, like snap wraps, all these foods. I eat probably 2 pounds of spinach a week, full of oxalates, you know?
Yeah.
I just take that out now. It's just this incredibly complex puzzle that I've been figuring out for myself for 2 decades. And now I see it in my kid. And it's like, whoa, when do you get to the point where you're like, I've got it all figured out? You know, it just never happens.
No,
it just never happens.
If you ever meet someone that thinks they've got it all figured out, that person is delusional, right? If there's anything I figured out, is the moment that I think I'm coming even remotely close to figuring it out, the universe hands me a deck of cards and I'm like, oh, Jesus, I'm not even close to figuring it out. Thank you, Lord. So, you know, I think being humble to, one, realize there's no way, we're not omniscient and we're not God and we're never going to figure it all out. But at the same time, I don't know if you've ever heard of systems biology.
No.
So systems biology is actually, right now, it's more in a theoretical domain of medicine. It hasn't yet really made it into full-fledged practice. Functional medicine is taught by the Institute of Functional Medicine, technically is a systems biology model. Now, the way it's ultimately practiced by most people kind of begs the question of how effective it is. I'm sure the people that created it see it as that. Systems biology is this really simple concept that everything in the body affects everything and everything is interconnected, and ultimately an issue in one area can basically throw everything else off. And to really understand what the hell is happening in someone, you have to see the collective of all of the things that are taking place. Yeah. And, you know, for instance, with the families that I consult with, why it takes me, you know, half a century to do one consultation is I literally start from the moment they were conceived and before, and walk through every single moment of their life and ask about every single system during every single one of those moments to get this picture of what was their digestive tract like, what was their skin like, what was their breathing like at every stage, when did the, you know, cognitive issues, behavioral issues show up at every stage. And through this, you start building a picture of the human being to then understand, and I've done this enough times where in my brain, I can really quickly go through the different systems and how they're interconnected. And for instance, you could do a stool test and the system could say, well, you know, based on your bacteria, spinach is a fantastic thing, except it turns out the Viome actually cannot detect mold. You know, it turns out that essentially very few stool studies out there that are not used commercially, they're only used in research labs. And I actually talked to these folks. Most stool studies, including the fancy ones like Viome, which, you know, sell you God, they miss part of the picture. Yeah, they do. They make you think like, oh, holy cow, this is the coolest technology ever made. Wow, this is awesome. I'm gonna understand everything about myself, which is ridiculous for any company to do that. I mean, that's just fragrant. That's just arrogance.
That's just arrogance. You're not God. You don't have all the answers. God.
And there's no singular test that can help you understand everything about you. That's just ridiculous. But when you start stepping back, and again, it's like piecing the puzzles together, right? So if you have mold, it turns out that you actually develop oxalate intolerance, and you cannot tolerate high oxalate foods because those foods actually destroy your gastrointestinal tract. They can disrupt the nervous system. They can throw off your immune systems. Oxalates are not a good thing for the body. But you can only understand that if you step back and say, well, gosh, like I've got some brain fog. My kid has got, you know, these sensory issues. And if you want to go back to the sensory issues, because I think that's one of the rabbit holes we started off. Should we do that?
Yeah, okay. For sure. Yeah, get in there.
So with molds, they trip up histamine, right? And histamine actually changes our sensory pathways. So the way to understand this is our brain takes in information through our eyes, through our ears, through our skin, through our balance centers, which are part of the ears, and through a few other things. But those are the smell is another one, taste is another one. And through these senses, the brain is mapping out what the world around us is about, right? If those senses were gone, we would just be a big blob that would move, but be totally disconnected from the world, right? We presume that these sensory inputs are always perfectly attuned. And it turns out that they can be messed up in rather significant ways. If there's histamine as one example, high levels of histamine, you actually get distortions in these sensory pathways. So for instance, some kids and adults, they can get distortions in how they hear sound. And when they're in a super quiet environment where there's like one person talking to them or they're listening to their favorite music, they're fine. Everything's cool. You throw that person into a room with 50 people all screaming their head off at the same time talking, and they're in an enclosed space, so the sound is constantly bouncing off the walls. These people all of a sudden start developing anxiety, and some people get like overt anxiety attacks or panic attacks. Why? Because all of that sensory information from sound caused them to basically start short-circuiting, and the sound was so overwhelming to them that they couldn't handle it.
It just goes nuts on them.
Yeah. Now, in the case of your son, we just presume that, water in your hair is not a big deal. Why the hell is that a big deal? Well, if you can feel literally every single drop hitting your scalp, and the experience of water running over your eyes is actually really intense. So it's not soothing by any means. It's actually a very uncomfortable, intense experience, because he may feel like I'm just speculating because I don't know, but what if he's feeling like he's kind of drowning, or that just the water going over his face is so overwhelming to him that, it's actually uncomfortable. It's like,
it definitely is uncomfortable for him. 100%. He's got the big shower cap that goes on, and it's like a big crown so that I can spray his hair so none of the water goes over his face. It's like, it is, he hates it so much. Mm-hmm. And he'll like have his head up and he's like, are you done? Are you done? Are you done? And I'm like, I'm done. I'm almost done. I just got to get the bubbles out. It is such an experience for him.
It's intense.
It's such an experience for him, and I would never even have linked, histamines or hypersensitive because of all the things that is going on in there with washing his hair. Putting those together is awesome. How do you? What's the solution then? How do you manage that?
The solutions and treatments are actually the easiest part of this conversation. Once you get to a place where you're like, oh damn, there it is. There it is. Histamine is the reason why my poor kid is tripping out. And for instance, like the intolerance to meat, it turns out that histamines also change our sense of smell. So some kids can't stand the smell of certain foods because it's just so overwhelming. And, certain women, for instance, when they get pregnant, all of a sudden their sense of smell goes through the roof, right? They can't handle anything.
Yep.
Well, we think, okay, that's normal during pregnancy, and it is. But what if your kid, obviously they're not pregnant, but has a similar experience where the smell of the food, and meats obviously have a certain smell. And if the smell of the meat is too much, they can't handle it. The other thing is the texture of foods in their mouth start feeling different. So while we presume that, everyone enjoys the experience of food in their mouth, that is actually a wrong presumption. And it turns out with certain kids, and autistic kids are notorious for this. Like autistic kids eat 3 foods. They eat mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, and peanut butter plus or minus jelly. Like literally, that's all they eat. Why? Because those are the foods that feel good in their mouth. Those are the foods that don't overwhelm their smell and taste experience of food. When we throw something like steak into a child, or certain vegetables or slimy foods, like take, for instance, okra, or certain, or salmon eggs, right?
Yeah, we've had some okra experiences. Okra is just like, it's like snot. I know it's like snot. Eat it. Yeah, no.
but these foods are, while they may be pleasant to, me or someone else, for certain kids, those foods, like, you might as well just, like, I don't know, pour the most disgusting thing in their mouth and tell them to eat it. They can't handle it. So these are all just a handful of examples. Now, if you say, like, holy damn, that's my kid, that then treating it is actually the easiest part. So well, I can't give medical advice, on these kinds of talks.
This isn't a consultation or anything, but
it turns out that there's actually two really simple supplements that you should be able to find anywhere. One of them is this combination product called Mirica, Mirica.
Yeah, you sent that link to me. I actually have it for him already.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So it turns out Mirica has PEA, which is this fat that actually acts as an anti-inflammatory, and it has this compound called luteolin, which is kind of a resveratrol compound that also helps calm down inflammation. When you combine that with these enzymes that are derived from animals, but these DAO enzymes, and histamine block is one manufacturer of it, Seeking Health is the manufacturer. When you combine these, what happens is you create this anti-inflammatory effect in the nervous system, and you also drop histamine levels down to relatively normal levels. The coolest thing is this combination, at least 40-50% of the time, all of a sudden has kids chilled out to the point where the world isn't overwhelming to them. And I'll give you an example with my daughter, and she doesn't even need it every day. She's very sensitive, and before hair washing was a struggle. And we've got this 2-year-old of a son who's just this linebacker. I mean, he's just yoked, and he's strong, and he's just crazy high energy. Yeah. He's like the Elon Musk physiology. And my son will go and kind of, he's not intending to smack her, but as a 2-year-old, he kind of doesn't know his own strength. So he kind of hits her. And before he would hit her, and she would literally spend 3 minutes crying because she's like, that hurts so bad. And my wife is like, come on, suck it up. And I'm like, no, this is genuinely hurting her. Another thing that was really interesting about my daughter was we would encourage her to go scootering and bike riding. And when we come down the hill, she would like slam on the brakes and literally go at like a snail speed, because the experience of the momentum was actually really scary to her. I kid you not, this is the part that's really trippy, as a parent to watch this. I started her on just the histamine block, just the DAO enzyme. And within 2 weeks, she still doesn't enjoy hair washing, especially having her hair brushed. Don't get me wrong. But the actual washing and conditioning of her hair no longer elicited tears. Now my son is still just as annoying to her, and he'll still, do his smacks. And she's like, ow, that hurts, and look at him, like try to push him away. The coolest part is, we were going literally scootering a week or two later, and now she's like ripping down the hill to the point where I'm like, shit, she's going to fall. She's going to hurt. And I'm the one getting scared. Why? Because her sensory pathways, her experience of momentum, her experience of her hair being washed, the experience of someone touching your skin changed, and the intensity actually dialed down. So when he's now smacking her, it's annoying, it's insulting, but not over the top painful. Mm-hmm. And that's the really, really cool part of this entire discussion. Like, we can literally revamp and change the experience of so many people to make their life so much better by just having these conversations and just having this understanding.
I think that's where we need to go as a society, is like having the conversations and looking for the actual information that's going to be beneficial, instead of just complaining about all this stuff. Well, what's the solution? What can we do about this? How do I help my child with this obviously painful situation that they're in? So that's why I wanted to talk to you, Dr. K. Like, you blow my mind. You just blow my mind. You're like a superstar pediatrician. I'm completely honored to be talking to you. It is fantastic to dig into your brain. I could talk to you for hours, days. I mean, I'll come down to, I spent 5 weeks down in San Diego right before COVID happened, and I just love it down there. It's like, I feel like California is my second home. And I would love to come and do another tour once all the craziness kind of settles down a little bit more. But yeah, California, I like the energy of the people from California. I feel like the sunshine it does something for them. You know, they're always out in it. They're always smiling. You've got that amazing California energy. I really like it and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So is there anything that we need to like, when is Wholistic Minds going to be 100% up and running?
So we're up and running now. We're taking our first group as beta users. So this will be the first group that I'll actually be walking through the system, you know, one by one. And I'll personally be supervising everything to make sure that all the processes are working and whatever recommendations the system puts out is actually accurate. So the system is live now. It's actually functional now. The full system with all the bells and whistles will probably be released in the next 6 to 12 months, depending on how quickly we can go through the beta testing. And I mean, at the end of the day, we also need funding because we built this system on our own dime and we've got it to where we need a lot more support from, you know, developers and ultimately data scientists and a whole team. And that's going to take some, you know, money to do. So once we get the money and we can really go hard, we can really build the system the way we want. But it's live now and it's actually available, and at least all the fundamental pieces are there now, so we can start providing care for, you know, the families that are interested.
So anybody can go and check out holisticminds.com and see what you're offering. Get into the beta group, maybe. I might join that. I might get in there. That's fantastic. I got a question for you though. If you had a magic wand and you could just like one wish for the medical society, what do you think you would change? What would you do with that one wish for everybody?
The one wish would be that as a medical community and society, we would just become more open-minded. And we would be comfortable in recognizing our, you know, insufficiencies or areas of weakness. And we would be okay in saying like, God, I don't know everything. I'll never know everything. And it's okay. And if someone walks up to me and says, hey, what about this? You know, even if it sounds completely foreign to me, I'll be open to it. I think that's how real change will come about. And I think that the transformations we need to really help so many people who are suffering in such profound ways will really come about with the establishment and physicians just saying, you know what, God, maybe what I learned is not all that there is. And I mean, it sounds so obvious, right? But it's not necessarily what materializes in practice.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic wish. I hope that it becomes a reality, and I think that's where we're going. And if I can promote that, I think it's the best way forward. Dr. K, you have blown my mind. I am forever grateful for you, and I hope that we can maybe have another podcast in the future. But yeah, I will definitely stay in contact with you for sure. So thank you so much for this
was fun, and I'm happy to come back and share more.
Yeah. You know, I could do a bunch of these podcasts. I could do a bunch of these podcasts with you. Thank you so much.